And so the ministry of Jesus Christ just began to expand. And the people who came were intrigued. And they would tell others. And they were very evangelistic. And the crowds just kept getting bigger and bigger. And finally, Jesus would have to get up on the side of a mountain just to be able to have a little separation from the crowd. And he would preach and he would teach there on the side of the mountain. And then there were times when he'd be near the seashore. And he'd tell somebody, he says, bring that boat up close to the shore, but give a little bit of separation with the water. And he'd stand on that ship, and he would just preach and proclaim truth. And as he continued to minister these things, he touched the very hearts of the people, a people who were often living in desperation. And he brought them to a place of hope. And you see, hope is such an important aspect of life. When people lose hope, they become desperate. And when people become desperate, they do desperate things. And many times when people are desperate, they act out and they do things that are detrimental because they're trying somehow or another to find some type of relief from the life that they're living and try to cause it all to make sense to them. Oftentimes this results in behavior that's very, very detrimental. And when they hear the truth and ministry such as Christ would bring forth, of course, it's like Jesus himself talked about. He said that when the sower went forth to sow, and he would begin to cast out the seed, or begin to cast the seed, what we call broadcasting. And the seed would go out, and Jesus said that sometimes the seed falls on good ground, sometimes it falls on stony ground, and oftentimes the deceitfulness of riches and the cares of the world will choke out the seed. So Jesus is out among the multitudes, and he's casting the seed. He's broadcasting the seed, and it's falling on ears of people who oftentimes had just abandoned any hope in God because the God that was being dispersed by those leaders in Jerusalem weren't words that would minister to the soul. But when Jesus spoke, he brought hope. And he brought ministry that would come to the very heart of the people. And he would help them to be able to deal with life circumstances and the things that they were involved in. Because much of his ministry and his message was the message of forgiveness. To forgive those who had wronged you. Forgiving the government who is treating you in such a horrible way. He brought the message of forgiveness, which is a message of hope. And people went from despair to hope. And they would hear these words, and oftentimes they wouldn't want to leave. And they would just stay, even though they were hungry. They needed to go nourish their bodies, but they didn't want to go because they kept wanting to be there to hear these words of hope. That's what Jesus brought to the people, and that's why they were so excited about his ministry. But it was also why those who plotted to kill him were doing what they were doing, because they were threatened. This is Pastor Jack King with the gospel on the radio broadcast.